Have you guys heard stories about students who seem super incredible and have amazing stats and then get rejected from every top 10 or top 20 university they apply to? In this video, I'm going to talk about the random deciding factors in elite college admissions. I've been coaching students through the college application and essay process. In particular, I'm mostly an essay coach, and then I also am a bit of what I'd call a story coach, in the sense that helping students shape their stories so that they've got one that resonates with admissions offices. We've also got some live classes going on and a college essay writing class, which you can check out. So let's get started with this. As always, if you want to read instead of watch, we've got a blog. Link is going to be in the description. First thing I'm going to say is over half of students who apply to elite universities are typically 100% academically qualified. So if that's the case, and elite schools make up less than 1% of the US high school population, right? They can take less than 1% of the students in America, and yet 40% of students in America have good GPAs. You can see how test optional is starting to seem like, wow, they have a lot of applications to deal with. How the heck are they going to decide? Exactly. How are they going to decide? I'm going to tell you in this video, and you might not like the answers. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is human bias of your essay reader. Who reads your essay first matters a whole lot. And whether that person connects with you is a bit of a dice roll. It could be that you advocate for a cause like women's rights or something that really resonates with that person. For example, Harvard's dean once said that he had a soft spot for students that help take care of their siblings because he had to do that when he was younger. Whatever it is, if there's a bias in your reader, that could be a potential deciding factor when you've got so many qualified candidates. Number two, quirkiness. Having random interests is sometimes attractive to colleges and universities, mostly because it makes for more interesting admissions essays, especially at schools where they have lots of little short admissions essays, and then you can be kind of zingy or funny or whatever it is. So if you're a quirky person and you have a funny, quirky sense of humor, doing odd or different things, whether it's I like to ride unicycles or enjoying dissecting owl pellets, right? That's one. Knitting. A guy who knits. I once had a guy who knitted. That was kind of quirky. But yeah, random quirkiness sometimes is a little spicy, interesting thing that grabs people's attention and makes your essays or your application look more interesting. Geography. Where you're from matters. If you're from Kentucky or Wyoming, you're going to have a much easier time getting into elite colleges than somebody from California or New York. Whenever I get students that I work with who are from places like Oklahoma or West Virginia or Kentucky, I will tell you they get into almost every school they apply to, even regular decision. Some colleges and universities make it a goal to try to admit somebody from every state if they can. Other colleges and universities care less about that, but it's certainly an element that if you're the academically qualified person from Wyoming, you have a much better shot at getting in than a well-qualified candidate from California. Next on my list is a random major or passion. And I know I've mentioned this before. If you're interested in something really random, let's say you're not Korean at all and you're really interested in Korean language and literature and you've gone out of your way to learn Korean, and this college or university has a Korean department, that's kind of the weird thing that sometimes can push you over the edge when everybody else kind of looks the same and you have this, funky kind of interest in Korean, even though your parents don't speak a lick of Korean and you have no Korean roots whatsoever. Now, you can't be disingenuous on this. You can't just pretend that you're into, this random major when you have nothing to support it on your resume and you haven't developed that interest. So that also doesn't work. If your resume shouts, I'm a computer scientist, and then you're like, hey, can I major in, comparative literature? They might sniff that out and say, no way, no how, I'm not buying this, this is a bunch of baloney. But if you have a developed passion in a random area that is undersubscribed and important to a college, that can be a deciding factor. Number 5, relationships with high schools and counselors. You might hear some high school counselors say, oh, we have a good relationship with Princeton, or we have a great relationship with Columbia. And what that means is that school traditionally sends a certain number of students to that particular school. Sometimes what happens is every year, 5 kids from your high school get in, or 10 kids from your high school get in. And that's just kind of the way that things usually go. The Atlantic actually did an article on this phenomenon a few years back, and then we saw some kickback. Personally, I saw some kickback from the school that was featured in that article. And that article was kind of scratching the head and saying, hey, Why is this? What is this factor going on? So that certainly can be one thing that influences your ability to get in somewhere. So it's unlikely that, like, if your mom just happens to know somebody from college that's a professor at XYZ University, that, oh, you're a shoo-in now there. But if mom does know that friend that's a professor there, and mom also knows that you're interested in sociology, and this person happens to be a sociology professor writing a book, and your mom calls them up and says, hey, I know you're working on this book. My son is looking for a summer internship. Could you use his help? And she's like, oh yeah, you're my BFF from college, sure. And then you go and work for her, and then you can get a letter of rec from her at the same college you're applying. That can sometimes be a golden ticket, right? If a college or university is trying to decide whether to let you in, and you have a letter of rec that's glowing from someone who is their own, who's at their university, right? And finally, number 7, this is less of a feather and more of a big pot of gold, donations. I think we all kind of know about this one, that if you give, like, $500 million to a university, your kid might come off a wait list. So billionaires, be aware, you can probably buy your way in, but you've got to have, like, lots of serious cash, like building a building kind of cash, not necessarily just a couple $100,000, like double my tuition kind of cash isn't really going to cut it. That kind of huge level donation, a random deciding factor, or maybe it's not so random, but it can feel random, or can certainly feel like that's not a meritocracy, at least for the kid. Maybe it is for the family, but not the kid. Remember, if you're working on your SAT or ACT score, to try to get that up to a good baseline, check out our best SAT and ACT prep courses ever at SupertutorTV.com. We've seen students definitely get into the 99th plus percentile scores, some even perfect scores, using our courses and get into the colleges of their dreams. That's all I've got for today. I hope you guys found this helpful. I know this list can be really discouraging to some of you, and if you feel discouraged, I want to encourage you, don't feel discouraged. One, there's thousands of universities in the United States, and studies have shown that your outcomes in life have less to do with where you go and more to do with who you are. So I wouldn't worry. 2, if you do want to compete, there are other ways to compete beyond these random things that almost seem uncontrollable. You guys are awesome, and I want you to congratulate yourself for worrying about your college future and hoping to figure this system out, because understanding the system is kind of the first step to figuring out your place in it. And so hopefully I can kind of help you on that journey. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, guys. Check out our TikTok. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.